Hey guys, welcome back to Next Level Coding. My name is Danny, and today we're going to be taking a look at one of the most fundamental data types in the Python programming language, and that data type is going to be the Python string. We're going to be taking a look at exactly what Python strings are, how we can work with them, and perhaps most importantly, the built-in functions that the Python programming language possesses to help us manipulate them. If you find this video helpful, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe because I will be dropping more and more content just like this one to help you guys out in your programming journey. But for now, let's get right into it. Now, in order to assign a Python string to a variable, there are actually two ways that we can do this. The first way is by using the set of open and closed double quotes, which surround any sort of text that we wish to make a string. The second way that we can actually create a string in Python is to also use the set of open and closed single quotes. Now, this is actually an important distinction to make here because some languages this would actually be invalid. For example, in Java, using the set of open and closed single quotes actually defines the primitive data type of a character. However, in Python, it is generally best practice to use double quotes for strings, but if you do choose to do so, single quotes will also afford you the same functionality. Now, the reason why strings can be so useful in computer programs is because typically, no matter which programming language you are working with, there's going to be a way to see the output of a variable or a string within a terminal. And in the Python programming language, we can actually use the print statement to go ahead and see the output of whatever variable we have within our program. And so if I went ahead and I ran my Python program here, you'll notice that in my terminal down below, I can actually see the word hello world printed out. Now, while this is a radical oversimplification of why we would want to print out variables, as your computer programs grow more and more complex, you might have to resort to this method to begin a debugging sort of process. So if you're not getting the correct behavior out of a script that you would like, one solution to be able to try to debug that program is to go ahead and print things out within the terminal down below. And that is what I would argue is probably one of the chief benefits of using strings in the Python programming language. Now, perhaps you're wondering, well, what kind of characters can we place within a string? Like, can we put numbers instead of letters? Can we put different types of symbols? And the answer to that question is actually we can pretty much put anything that we would want in between this set of open and closed double quotes. So for example, we can place numbers, and if we were to print this out, we would actually get exactly what we would expect, right? The numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 printed out as well. We can even place non-alphabetic and non-numeric characters within strings and still see the contents that are contained within our set of double quotes. Now, perhaps one of the most powerful features of strings in the Python programming language, and other languages possess this too, is being able to perform a type of interpolation of strings with other variables that we declare. So let me just go ahead and show you an example. If I had the name Danny here and I had a string written as such, my name is, and then this set of open and closed curly braces, I can actually interpolate the value of this variable into my string by using this method here called format. And by using this .format method and supplying the name variable as an argument, if I were to go ahead and print out the contents of my string, it is not actually the my name is open and closed curly braces that will be printed out, but instead you'll notice that it is actually my name is Danny that gets printed out. And so all of that to say, strings can not only contain alphanumeric characters or other types of what we would call ASCII characters, they can even contain, in certain ways, variables, which is a very, very cool feature of strings. So now that we know how to declare a string and what types of elements a string can contain, perhaps the next best question to ask is what type of functionality or ways that we can manipulate strings are available to us? Like, how in general could we just play around and see what type of behavior we get? Well, perhaps one of the most fundamental operations that we can perform on strings is what we will call string concatenation. For example, if I were to declare the variables string1 and string2, and assign the values of hello and world to these variables, I could actually combine these two strings with the plus operator. Now, for those of you who might be familiar with the Python language, plus is actually used to add two numbers together. And so what we're doing here is actually we're not adding two strings together in a mathematical sense, but we are combining them to create a larger string. And if I were to go ahead and print this value out, you'll notice that we indeed combine the values of hello and world. Now, one thing to also keep in mind about string concatenations is that it will always run kind of tip to butt, if you will, each variable together. So if you notice, there's actually no space in between the O and the capital W in this string here. And so if you want to make sure you sort of keep the structure of spaces within a word or a phrase that you're creating, you can actually use two concatenations, and in the middle of your two variables, or however many variables you have, use a space character. And I know I have open and closed sets of single parentheses here. I kind of like this just to distinguish that, hey, this is like its own type of thing. But if I were to run this, you'll indeed see that I do retain the space between the words that I'm trying to print out. Now, we can actually also iterate over every single letter of a string by using a Python for loop. So for example, if I were to use the for loop syntax and say for char, character, that's generally how we refer to letters in programming, for every character in the string 1, print out that character. And if I were to go ahead and run my script here, you'll actually see that I have the words H, E, L, L, and O all printed out on separate lines within my terminal. And there are some use cases where this is actually an extremely beneficial process to use. Now, one of the things that I love the most about the Python programming language is the simplicity in which we can typecast different data types into each other, and strings are no different. And so, for example, if we had a dictionary where we had the key hello and the value of world, we can actually use this str operator and simply supply any type of element that we wish to convert to a string as an argument. And so you guys will notice, for example, if I went ahead and ran this program, I actually get the open and close curly braces printed out within my print statement here. And again, hearkening back to the string interpolation that we had seen earlier with that dot format method, right? Those open and close curly braces weren't showing up. And that's because under the hood, Python's smart enough to know, okay, hey, if you supply an open and close curly braces that are empty within open and close double quotes, right? I know to interpolate this variable. Here, the difference is we actually have a dictionary that's actually not encased in double quotes. And so that's why this functionality and indeed this variable is a string right here. Now, in the Python programming language, we actually have upwards of, I believe the last time I checked, something like 47 different string methods that we can apply to strings to get different types of behavior. And I will go ahead and link down in the description below a list of all those methods. We'll cover some of them here, the most important ones. If you guys want to look up what the other types of methods are that are out there, I'll go ahead and just simply provide that to you for you guys to look at on your own time. But one of the most powerful methods that I feel that I use the most often is the dot split method. And so this is probably best explained through an example. So if I were to have the string hello world, there are some instances where I might want to extract each word from this string individually, right? Let's say I wanted to create a Python list where the first element is going to be the word hello and the second element is going to be the word world. Well, I can actually do that using this dot split method. And what this dot split method does is it will split the string at whatever character I supply it. And so here I'm telling Python, hey Python, I would like to split this string on the comma character to be able to extract individually both words of this string. And so perhaps the best way to see this in action is just simply to run our program. And so you guys will notice that indeed the dot split method converts this string into a list where each element represents the word that is on either side of this character that we supplied as an argument. Now, similar to string concatenation, we actually have to be sort of careful when we want to use a split method. So for example, if you guys notice, I have a blank space out in front of the W of the word world. And that's because Python is actually splitting it on that exact character, kind of like right down the middle. And so the first quote unquote character to the right of this comma is actually an empty space. And the solution to this is actually quite simple. We just simply supply a space here within our dot split expression. And if I go ahead and run this again, you'll notice that indeed the space out in front is gone, and we just simply have the characters for the word world. Now, the dot split method is actually so complicated that it deserves its own video in its own right, because what we're actually doing here is using a type of what we would call regular expression, or a regex, or a regex, regex. What regexes do is they allow us to parse strings based upon a sort of quote unquote filter criteria that we provide as an argument to whatever function requires a regex type of argument, right? So here we're saying, hey, Python, please split on every comma character. But if we wanted to, we could say, hey, please split on the first however many numeric characters, or hey, Python, please split on any word that is capitalized. Regexes actually allow us to do all that, but it's actually a not intuitive process. And so I'm going to actually address this in a future video. Now, if you're using Python 3.6 or later, you can actually use this really cool functionality that strings afford us in the ability to declare F strings. Now, what's an F string, you might ask? Well, it's actually just a more of a shorthand notation to perform string interpolation. Now, if you guys recall at the beginning of the video, when I had this very similar syntax here, I supplied the dot format method, and Python automatically knew to place the variable we placed as an argument to the dot format method into this set of open and close curly braces. And in Python 3.6 and later, you can actually just perform this directly by leading your string with the letter F, hence the name F string. And generally, I'm not sure if this is actually 100% correct, but I just think of this as a formatted string, right? The F standing for the legacy dot format. And if we were to go ahead and run this, we actually get the exact same output. And this is actually incredibly useful where the values that are placed within strings can change over time. And so while those are pretty much the baseline types of features that strings offer us, I now want to get into the types of methods that we can apply to strings to sort of change the contents that are contained within that set of double quotes. So for example, if I had the string, my name is Danny, right, the one that we printed out, I can actually get access to these two methods here, dot lower and dot upper. And perhaps intuitively, you might be able to guess what exactly is going to happen to our string when it's transformed. But as expected, the dot lower method turns every single character within our string into lowercase, and the dot upper method changes every single character within our string into uppercase. A couple of other useful methods that we can use is the dot capitalize and the dot index methods. The dot capitalize method will actually capitalize only the first letter of the first word in our string above. It will then transform all of the subsequent characters into lowercase. And the dot index method actually returns to us the number of the index within our string that a letter or character occurs. So for example, if I went ahead and ran my script, you'll notice that the string up here, my name is Danny, becomes this version where everything else is lowercase. The first letter is capitalized. And the number 6 is returned to us from the index method here with E as an argument. And the reason why is because if we count from left to right using 0 indexing, so starting from 0, we actually have 0, 1, 2, because a space indeed does count as a character, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so if we wanted to isolate the letter E within this string, we could use the dot index method to do so. An important thing to note is it's always going to return the first instance of that character. So in the string above, you'll notice we actually have 3 n's. If I were to go ahead and run this and provide n as an argument, you'll notice that it returns the first time this occurs, which is at the 0, 1, 2, 3 index. Now we can also use string methods to return to us booleans to help us evaluate, does this string satisfy certain conditions? Now the 3 methods that I feel are the most useful in evaluating very popular string condition criteria are the .isAlpha, .isAscII, and .isAlNum methods. Starting with the .isAlpha method, this method evaluates, hey, does the string contain solely alphabetic characters? And so if we go ahead and actually run our script, we expect this to evaluate to false, because we actually have additional spaces within our string here, which are not alphabetic characters. The .isASCII method determines, hey, is everything contained within this string an ASCII character? Now, as I mentioned previously, ASCII is a low-level representation of a character in sort of the bytecode or machine code of our machine when we go ahead to evaluate it. So all that to say, for example, under the hood, there's actually a way we can numerically represent the value of the character E that allows our machine to print out an E whenever it occurs. And so in this case, all of these are indeed ASCII characters and they do evaluate to true. And lastly, we have the .isAlNum method, which evaluates similar to isAlpha, is everything contained within this string alphabetic, with the additional criteria that are numbers actually present in this as well. So if we were to run our program, we should expect it to get false, true, false, and indeed after running it, that's exactly what we get. We wanted to get the isAlpha and isAlNum methods to evaluate to true. I'll just go ahead and do a quick example of that. If we have this string here, alphabet, containing only alphabetic characters, and this alphanumeric string containing only alphabetic and numerical characters, if we went ahead and ran our program, we would receive true for both statements. And lastly, you guys, perhaps some more simple conditional method evaluations are the .isLower, .isUpper, and .isDigit methods. And it's probably very intuitive to figure out what these do. The isLower method evaluates is everything in here lowercase. The isUpper evaluates is everything in here uppercase. And the isDigit method evaluates is everything within this string numeric. And I actually forgot to change this to the digit string here, but if we were to go ahead and run our character, you'll notice that indeed we get true, false, true, like we might expect. So that's going to do it for this video, you guys. I hope this was actually useful and helping you become more familiar with strings in Python. Honestly, the best piece of advice I could give you all is that the only way you're going to become extremely comfortable and extremely familiar with using Python strings is just to simply program. I've often found that the way I'm able to discover how to manipulate strings to get a desired functionality is simply by having use cases or actual problems arrive in my job that requires me to format a string in a certain way. So if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure you leave a like, subscribe down below, and I'll catch you all in the next one. I'll see you then.